All right, let's get right into it. You're out in the garage, you're trying to bleed your brakes, and absolutely nothing is coming out of that bleeder valve. It is, without a doubt, one of the most maddening things you can run into. But hey, don't throw that wrench just yet. We're going to turn this major headache into a solved case. So you've pumped the pedal, you've cracked the screw, and you're just staring at a totally dry valve, feeling completely stuck. Yeah, we have all been there. But here's the thing. From now on, you're not a frustrated mechanic. You're a garage detective. The clues are all there, and in this quick explainer, we're going to follow them step by step to find the culprit. Before we start blaming any parts, the first stop in any good investigation is to rule out the most common suspect of all, human error. So let's get down to business and make sure our own procedure is absolutely perfect. And look, this is such a crucial first step, because jumping straight to buying parts can waste a whole lot of time and money. More often than not, the problem is just a simple, tiny misstep. This is especially true if you're using one of those vacuum or pressure bleeder kits. If they're not sealed up just right, you're just not going to build the pressure you need to push any fluid out. So let's just lock down the classic two-person method, which is really the most reliable way to know if your system can even build pressure. It's all about the timing. Your partner pumps the pedal 3 to 5 times to build up pressure, then holds it firmly to the floor. Only then do you open the bleeder screw. Let the fluid and air out, and this is the critical part. You have to close the screw before your partner lets their foot off the pedal. If you nail this sequence and still get nothing, well, now we know for sure the problem is in the car, not in the technique. All right, procedure confirmed. Technique is solid. So our investigation now moves to the scene of the crime, the wheel that just will not bleed. Oh, this right here is one of the sneakiest culprits out there. If you've recently put on new calipers, it is surprisingly easy to mix up the left and right sides. If the caliper's on the wrong side, the bleeder valve ends up at the bottom. And since air always rises, right, it gets trapped at the very top of the caliper with no way to escape. You'll never get a good bleed. The rule is simple. The bleeder valve must always be the highest point on the caliper. Now, let's break down the 3 local suspects. First, the bleeder screw itself. I mean, think about it. It's exposed to all the elements. Its tiny little passage can get completely clogged with rust and gunk. Next up, the flexible rubber hose. Over time, the inner lining can actually collapse on itself, acting like a one-way valve that blocks fluid flow, even if the hose looks totally fine from the outside. And finally, you could just have a clog or even some damage in the rigid brake line itself. So, if all the parts right there at the wheel check out, our investigation has to move upstream. The evidence is now pointing to a problem higher up in the system that's stopping fluid from even getting to the wheel in the first place. And that brings us to the heart of the system, the master cylinder. We've got 3 key questions to ask here. First, did the reservoir ever run completely dry? If it did, you probably sucked in a huge gulp of air that has to be bled out, starting right from the master cylinder itself. Second, if it's a brand new master cylinder, it absolutely must be bench bled before you install it. That means getting all the internal air pockets out on a workbench before it goes in the car. And finally, an old master cylinder can just have worn out internal seals, which means it can't build the hydraulic pressure needed to push fluid down the line. Okay, now let's look at another suspect, the proportioning valve. Its whole job is to balance the braking force between the front and rear wheels. But sometimes, and this is a great tip, especially if the car is jacked way up and the suspension is hanging down, this valve can get tripped, which can shut off fluid flow completely to a part of the system. Of course, it can also just get clogged up with debris over time. And here's the curveball with modern cars, the ABS module. This thing is a complex box of hydraulic valves that can be an absolute nightmare for trapping air. A lot of the time, the only way to properly bleed the air out of an ABS module is with a professional diagnostic scan tool that can electronically cycle its internal valves and force that trapped air out. Okay, we've gathered all our clues. We've got a list of suspects. Now, let's put it all together into a clear diagnostic plan. A simple roadmap that's going to take you straight to the solution. This quote right here is the golden rule of our entire investigation. This is how you isolate the problem. You start at the wheel, and you work your way back. If you loosen the fitting where the hard line meets the rubber hose and you get fluid, you know the blockage is somewhere after that point. But if no fluid comes out, the problem has to be further upstream. This is the key to finding exactly where your blockage is. So here it is, your diagnostic funnel. Start at the top with the easiest and most common stuff first. Step 1, verify your procedure. Step 2, check all the components right at the wheel. Step 3, use that golden rule to isolate the blockage. Only then do you move on to inspecting the master cylinder And finally, the more complex system valves, like the proportioning valve or the ABS module. Follow this path, and you will find your problem. By following these logical steps, you've gone from being stuck and frustrated to being a methodical detective. You examined the evidence, you followed the clues, and you isolated the suspect. You didn't just throw parts at a problem, you diagnosed it. You have officially cracked the case of the dry bleeder valve. You know, this process of logical diagnosis, it applies to almost any problem on your car. So, with this mystery solved and a new skill unlocked, the only question left is this: what's the next system you're ready to investigate and master?